So, question that we always have to ask is simply this: who is my enemy? Who's my enemy? I mean, that's when we ask, because we have this little thing every once in a while. You know, Katie and I will get in a little bit of a louder discussion, and at some point, one of us kind of goes, "Just remember, I'm not your enemy." Anybody else do that? Like sometimes we kind of get to that place where we're like, "Man, it really feels like we are." But you just got to know I'm not your enemy, and there's something else going on here that's like we really need to grab a hold of, right? And here's where I want to start today. Okay, I'm really trying to what I want to do is a couple different things. Number one, I want you to see that our current place in which we reside right now, yes, there may be some physical things that are causing a little bit of war, but we've got to understand there's a bigger war going on that we don't really see all the time. And oftentimes it comes out in our actions and our words and things like that, or in quarrels that we have with other people. But my hope is that we begin to see the true enemy behind the curtain here, right? That we begin to see his plans truly are to steal, kill, and destroy. Can we go back to that from last week for a minute? We've got to understand foundationally when we come into this that Jesus said that the enemy's plans, okay, so the enemy, the devil, we look at it and go, oh, the little pitchfork guy. Yeah, it's not the little pitchfork guy, okay? The enemy's plans are to steal, kill, and destroy God's purpose and plans for your life. That's what it is. The other thing we need to establish at the very beginning of this is that, and some of you may even think this way, that there's God and then there's the devil, and they're co-equals. Nope. Not even close. We got to go down a few notches, and we see that the devil might be on the same level as a Michael, right? An archangel, one of those. But the devil is not, he's not the comparable to God. He's not, it's just not there. God is supreme over all, in all, and through all. Right? The devil can't do anything apart from what God will allow. Okay, do we understand that? Everybody on the same page? Some of you are new, you're like, what did I just walk into? Freedom. Okay? And here's what I want to say. This is going to be a little bit more heavy. It's not going to be so hey, here's 3 things you can do to be happier in life, okay? You're going to find that there's a lot more happiness when you begin to understand that this battle has been going on long before you ever step foot on this earth. This war, it's been continual for years and years and decades, millennials, and from the beginning of eternity, right? So, let's start from that point. And here's what Peter says about our enemy. He says this. He says, first of all, be alert and sober-minded, because your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to what? He's going to steal, kill, destroy. That's what he's looking for. In 1994, I had an awesome opportunity. I went on a mission trip to Africa, okay? And it was one of the coolest experiences. I was between my junior and senior year of high school. And one of the things we were halfway up Mount Kilimanjaro, beautiful, you're above the clouds. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Everything's green, right? But we were done doing our crusades and stuff that we were doing up on the mountain, and we came back down. In our fun day, okay, was we got to go on a safari. Okay, how many that's on my bucket list? I got to do it when I was a junior. I don't know if I truly appreciated it as much as I would now, right? But I would say this, when they say nothing beats sunsets in Africa, yeah, nothing beats sunsets in Africa. Because the colors are just unbelievable. And I've seen some beautiful sunsets. You've been to Lake Michigan at sunset time, there's some beautiful sunsets. But I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the dust in the air there. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I don't know, but it's beautiful. And so I got the privilege of going on this safari, and one of the things we got to do was ride in these trucks. And these trucks have these pop-up tops where you can kind of sit in, and you kind of look out and you can see the animals, and the animals are as close as I am to Walt right now over here, and like they're right there, right? And so the driver pulls up this van, and he parks there for a minute, and like we were looking around, we're like, oh my gosh, there's like 7 lions right here, you know? And for some reason, you don't want to talk with lions around because it's like they can't smell you and go, lunch, you know? Like it's like if they hear me, then they know I'm here, right? And so we're like there's people like hanging out trying to take pictures. I'm like, are you like what? Like you're just making it easy pickings, you know? So like take that guy, not me. Okay? So like the lion, the king of the jungle, big old mane is like literally, I can't even get as close to Walt right now without falling off the stage of how close this lion was to the vehicle. Okay? And out in the distance were some zebras and wildebeest, otherwise known as lunch, dinner, daytime snack, whatever you want to call them, okay? And I will tell you, after having wildebeest, I know why lions like wildebeest, because they're delicious, okay? So anyways, we're in the safari, and here's the thing we see. We see all these lionesses, and there's the prey out there, right? And what are they doing? They're prowling around. And you have to watch, because they're like in the little bush over here, and you're like, oh, I could hardly see them. And they're looking for food to devour. They're looking for their next meal, right? And so when we see this picture, when we see your enemy, the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, like I got to see, not on Discovery Channel or not on National Geographic, but like right there, the thing I wish we would have got to see is it tracking one down and killing it. That would have been awesome. Sorry. But it would be. How many would agree with me so I don't feel like I just said like, you know, cow is good in a vegans conference, okay? Like, that's what it feels like. But it gave you this real picture of like, oh, like they don't even know that they're there. And at that wrong moment, if he turns and goes, oh, there's a nice little piece of grass to eat here, whoop, they're done. But that's the picture. Like your enemy's waiting, like he's waiting to steal, kill, and destroy. He's waiting to make your life a living hell, literally. Right? But Peter says this, he says, resist him. Standing firm in your faith. Basically what Peter's saying is, hey, that lion has, it's like toothless. It's like the weakest lion. He says, so resist him. Stand firm in your faith. So when we ask this question, who is our enemy? Man, there's so much that comes from this. You see, in Ephesians, it says this. It says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take a stand against the what? Devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against, oh, here we go. For our struggle is not against what? Flesh and blood. Pinch your neighbor. No, just kidding. They're flesh and blood. Your struggle, according to Paul, is not with the person next to you. It's not even with your neighbor. It's not with your coworkers. It's not with one of your kids. It's not. Your struggle is not flesh and blood, but it's against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. He's saying it's so much bigger than the person that you're pinching next to you. Because all of hell's assignment is to make sure that you don't fulfill the purpose that God has for your life. That the enemy in some way schemes up a plan to steal your marriage, to destroy your marriage. That the enemy comes up with a plan or a scheme to somehow take you out of that relationship. That the enemy comes up with this scheme to just keep you addicted or get you addicted to something. And then we begin to think, oh, my struggle is against this addiction, not against the enemy's plan in my life. Because your struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's the devil's schemes. It's what he's trying to do. And here's the thing. Depending on where you're at spiritually, He unleashes it. If you're walking around going, "Oh, my life's pretty easy and hunky-dory," you're probably not doing much for the kingdom of God. You know why? Every time you move towards something that God is doing, the spiritual temperature turns up. And you begin to see things begin to change. The environments around you begin to change. Because the enemy's looking at you going, "You ready? Wow, you said this. You must be a big guy. Get ready." Church, I think for so many years we've kind of bought into the lie that we're just here to be entertained. And we're just here to have this positive, good, topical, like life encouraging, life coaching message. And yes, there's times and there's different things in which we can talk about that's really encouraging. And I hope that by the end of this, you're going to go, "Okay, I'm really encouraged at this point." And you're like, "I don't know how you're getting there right now, but like, I see what you're saying." My hope and my prayer during this time is that you begin to understand who your real enemy is. Because if we can find out who the real enemy is, then we can begin to decode the schemes and the plans in which he's doing. So when this argument kicks up and you have this argument with somebody, now all of a sudden you're going, "Wait a sec. Where's this coming from?" And you're like, "Oh, wait. The devil is scheming, and he's got these evil plans, and so he's trying to use this to disrupt what it is that God is doing in my life." Over the last few weeks, we've seen God move in some very powerful ways. On marriage getaways, in Alpha, on men's getaways, all these different places. And guess what the enemy's not happy about? None of it. When all of a sudden we're sitting in an Alpha group and the conversation topic for this week is, "Does God still heal?" A group of 7 or 8 people stand up and say, "You know what? He does, and we're going to believe for it. We might not get all of it right, but we're going to practice." You're like, "What? That's weird." No, we prayed over people in that moment. We just said, "You know what? This is what we're going to do. We're not going to sit and talk and ask questions about does he or doesn't he, and we're just going to go, 'Hey, God, your word says this,' and so we're just going to pray. We're going to pray that deaf ears are open. We're going to pray that shoulders are healed. We're going to pray that knees are healed. We're going to begin to pray of all these things. And not just there. I mean, there's physical, but also some of these emotional, mental, physical, like spiritual things. We're going to begin to pray for healing in those areas too. And now all of a sudden, guess who's not happy about that? The enemy. Because now we're getting this little bit of belief and faith to go, "Oh, maybe God does do what he says. And if he doesn't, like, I'm going to continue to believe that he does. And I'm going to continue to practice. And I'm going to continue to trust that in his time, he's going to do exactly what he said he's going to do." And so you got to understand, like, there's a shuffling, it's like the enemy's not happy. And so as a church, our response is, "God, give us more faith. Give us more boldness. Give us more courage." Like, that's the place in which we need to live. And so we see this. The struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against all the evil forces. If we can understand that, then we can start with a foundation that goes, okay, so how does God defeat the enemy in my life? And I will tell you this, in ways you wouldn't expect. Do you know I know that? Because Scripture continually tells us of ways in which God defeated the enemy of the people of Israel. 2 Kings, there's this story, I think it's of the Arameans, and Elijah, which is really cool if you want to read this, is in 2 Kings chapter 6. But Elijah was a prophet of God, okay? So he was one that was appointed by him. And he had this really cool ability, okay, that God gave him. And it was like every time the Arameans would like plan and scheme to kind of attack the people of Israel, Elisha would go and tell the king of Israel exactly what was going to happen, and it would thwart their plans. Even at one point in 2 Kings, it says that Elisha is hearing what you're even saying in the behind closed doors of your bedroom. And he's telling the king about it. How cool is that? Okay, not cool. Okay. Like to me, I'm like, I got to be careful what I talk about in my room, right? But Elijah, this prophet, is going, no, this is what they're going to do next. This is what's going to happen. And so you got to be ready for this. And this way it goes, right? And then it comes to this one point. And it comes to this point where they come and they begin to surround the city. And Elijah and his servant are there. And the servant wakes up early one morning. How many are morning wake people? Okay. He gets up early that morning. Prophets must sleep more. I don't know. Like they like sleeping in. But it says that his servant got up, and when he walked out of the tent, he began to see the armies all up on the hills surrounding him. He got a little nervous, right? Like in that moment, he comes back to Elijah, and he's a little like disturbed. He's like, yes, like he doesn't know what to say. He's like, we're dead. Just go look out the door. We're dead. And Elijah prays a simple prayer for his servant. God, open his eyes to see that there are more for us than there are against us. And it says in that moment, the servant's eyes were open and they saw chariots all around. And his faith was encouraged because he saw that this wasn't a physical battle. The enemy was coming to destroy, but what God was doing was even bigger. And it says in that moment, Elisha began to pray as they came in, and he prayed that they would be blinded. Okay? I had this weird picture. Just sit with me for a minute here. I don't know if this happened, but I was like, all of a sudden, it's like Elijah prays, and like God sends all these angels down, right? And all these angels, like I said, just humor me for a minute. All these angels hop on the backs of all these people, put their hands over their eyes and go, hee hee, right? And like it says, they couldn't see. And then Elijah goes, oh, who you're looking for is over here. Follow me, guys. And like, they can't see. They're just following his voice. And so he leads them to this place in Samaria. And then he prays that God would open up his eyes and they would see that they were not even in the right place. Isn't that crazy? It was like then the angels went, well, this is fun. Can we do it again? You know, like, I don't know, I have a weird mind. Okay. But here's what follows this. You see, at least for me, I've always stopped at that. I've always stopped at, oh, isn't it cool that those who are for us is more than those who are against us? Like, it's so cool. But I never looked to see what God actually did after it. And this is what he did. It says, as soon as they entered Samaria, Elijah prayed, oh Lord, now open their eyes and let them see. So the Lord opened their eyes, and they discovered that they were in the middle of Samaria. And when the king of Israel saw them, he shouted to Elijah, my father, should I kill them? Should I kill them? You know, like he's like, hey, they're there. Like, we can literally eliminate them right now. Like, I'm no brilliant, like, military strategist, but God just, like, served them to us on a platter. Like, this is easy, God. Seems exactly the way in which you're trying to do this. And that's not the way God did it. Look at this. Elijah goes, of course not. Do we kill prisoners of war? Give them food and drink and send them home again to their master. What? Feed them? Give them something to drink? Hey, I know that you're here to kill us, but hey, have a steak on us. Have some wine, choice wine. We'll take care of you. Anything else, just ring the bell and we'll be here. But he says, give them food and drink and send them home again. And it says that's what he did. So the king made a great feast for them. Like, he didn't go and buy a couple burgers from McDonald's. He made a great feast for them. And then he sent them home to their master. And what does it say? After that, the Aramean raiders stayed away from the land of Israel. That's interesting, isn't it? God's way was compassion. He said, give them food and drink. He was compassionate on them. The king of Israel was like, are you sure? right? Like, they're right here. This will be easy. Like, not going to take much. We won't even lose people probably. Like, it's pretty easy. And God goes, no. Give them food and drink. And then send them away. And then after that, they never bother them again. Different than our ways, right? How many would side with me and go, off with their heads? Anybody? Okay, I guess it's just me. Weird. Okay. But here's the interesting thing. In Proverbs 22, it says this. It says, your surprising generosity will awaken his conscience, and God will reward you with favor. Sometimes God uses generosity to defeat our enemy. I mean, you've heard that saying before, kill him with kindness type thing. Like, that's what we kind of see here. But like, your generosity will awaken what God is wanting to do. When we begin to see that this struggle is not against flesh and blood, but it's a spiritual battle. And we want to do it the way that he wants us to do it. And this is what we see. In 2 Corinthians 10-5, it says, for though we live in this world, we do not wage war the way the world does. The weapons we fight with are not weapons of this world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to who? To Christ. He says, our weapons are not the same. The way we do it is not the same. I mean, I think it's pretty clear in that story with Elijah, with the prophet Elijah, that that's kind of a weird military strategy. Just like when God told Joshua to march around the city of Jericho 7 times, and then blow trumpets, and the walls would come down. And the people inside of Jericho were terrified, because they were probably like, what are these lunatics doing? They could take us out. Like, we've heard all the rumors. We know their God's with them and all this stuff. And literally, it was just the marching around and being obedient to what God asked them to do. And the walls came down. The way God does things is different than the way we do things. And I don't know if this is just me, but there's so many times that I try to do it my way, and it ends up way worse than it originally even started. Because I have my way. And my way is influenced by the way I grew up, what people said, like what I believe. I mean, you name it. And all those things, some good, some not so good. But what we got to understand, when we use the weapons that God has given us to use, we got to understand that they have divine power to demolish. This word demolish is to violently tear down. Like, they have a lot of power. I want to share with you another story, okay? And I'm going to read this story because this one's pretty interesting. But it's in 2 Chronicles 20. If you have the notes up, you'll be able to see it in there as well. But it says this, then the Spirit of the Lord came on Jehaziel, son of Zechariah, son of Benaiah, son of Jael, son of, all the sons of, a Levite, a descendant of Ashbah, as they stood in the assembly. He said this, listen, King Jehoshaphat, all who live in Judea and Jerusalem, this is what the Lord says to you. He says, do not be afraid or discouraged because of the vast army. And he says, for your battle, this battle is not yours, but it's God's. Tomorrow, march down against them, and they will be climbing up the pass of Ziz, and you will find them at the end of the gorge of the desert in Jeruel. You will not have to fight this battle, so take up your possessions, stand firm, and see that the deliverance the Lord will give to you, Judah and Jerusalem. He says, you're not even going to have to fight this battle. Like, it's coming, it's going to be here, but you got to understand, God's going to be the one that's going to be victorious. He's the one that's going to deliver you from this. And so I'm trying to give my wife hints. So, need her to come do something. But he says this, he continues, he says, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, and go out and face them tomorrow, and the Lord will be with you. Now, it's a really hard thing to go, oh, man, I'm going to trust that the weapons that God's given us, it's going to be enough. But I got to tell you, I question kind of the ways you do some things. Like, I question the reason why you, want me to feed my enemy. And this one goes even further, okay? And it says this. It said, Jehoshaphat bowed down with his face to the ground, and all the people of Judah and Jerusalem fell down, and they worshiped before the Lord. Then some Levites from the other places that I can't pronounce stood up, praised the Lord, the God of Israel, with a very loud voice. And listen to this part. He said, in that moment, early in the morning, they left for the desert of Tekoa. And they set out, and Jehoshaphat said to them, listen to me, Judah, people of Jerusalem. Have faith in the Lord your God, and you will be upheld, and have faith in his prophets, and you will be successful. After consulting the people, listen to this. It says this. It says, Jehoshaphat bowed down, face to the ground, and all the people... Well, I'm on the wrong side. It says, Jehoshaphat appointed men to sing to the Lord and praise him for his splendor of his holiness. And they went out ahead of the army, saying, give thanks to the Lord, for his love endures forever. And as they began to sing and praise, the Lord set up ambushes against the men, and they were defeated. Whoa. They worshiped their way to victory. Like physical victory. Like, think about this. There was a physical war, and what God told them to do was worship. And they did it. And it says they defeated the men that day. Some of you, we don't think about being generous. We don't think about compassion. We don't even think about praise and worship because we're so caught up in this earthly battle in which we're trying to fight and we're trying to win. But God's already going, no, the victory's yours. Just open your mouth. Open your mouth and begin to worship. It's something that you and I can do. When the words aren't really coming and we don't know what to say, start worshiping. It's just like Katie's playing right now. I'm going to see a victory. I'm going to see a victory in this situation because the Lord declares it. Right? And I'm going to see a victory. I'm going to see a victory. For the battle is all. See, I don't know the words. And I'm going to see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory, for the battle belongs to you. Do you believe it? Because if you do, then you're gonna wage war differently. And you're gonna come to realize really quickly that really the thing that's happening in the physical is being influenced by something else. And what we begin to see is James tells us very quickly, and the question we have to ask at this moment is, who is really your enemy? Who is really your enemy? And if we go to really who is our enemy, what we begin to see is in James 4, chapter 1, it says this, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from the battles that wage war inside of you? Who's your enemy? Your biggest enemy is you. He says you quarrel and fight. And do you know why you quarrel and fight? Because you don't have, but you want, and so you're not afraid to kill to get it. And you don't realize it, but your words kill. And you're not supposed to have that. But your jealousy is fueling your anger and your rage. It's causing you to do things that you would never do. And it's why. It's because of this battle, this struggle that was in me that says, I lack something. Oh, sorry, God. We know we talked about that during the summer. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack. Okay, let's say that again. I lack nothing. You desire, but you do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. And you do not have because you do not ask God. Wow. Ugh. So basically, you're not asking God, so you're just wanting to steal whatever somebody else has. And when you ask, you do not receive because you ask with the wrong motives. I just want what they have. Because if I have what they have, then I'll get what they get. But you don't want to pay the price sometimes of what they paid to get where they're at. You don't want to carry the lashes. You don't want to carry the weight. That's not you. You're not equipped for that. And yeah, if God gave it to you, if God really gave you what you wanted and what you're trying to steal, it would destroy you. Who's your enemy? It's not that person. It's you. It's the sinful part of you. It's what Paul says that needs to die. Why are we talking about this? Because the spiritual climate right now is really heightened. Like the enemy is not just prowling around right now. He's devouring. And if we don't do what James says in just a few seconds here, we're going to find ourselves fighting battles that we aren't even supposed to be in. And we're going to find ourselves surrendering ground that we were meant to occupy. But because of our sin, because of our desire, because of our wanting whatever we don't have, we're finding ourselves lost. And he simply continues on like this. He says, you adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity to God? Therefore, anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. Or do you think Scripture says without reason that he is jealously longs for the Spirit he caused to dwell in you? But he gives us more grace. This is why the Scripture said, God opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. But he shows favor to the humble. And then he continues on. He says, here's what you need to do. Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil. And he will what? Flee. So, simple but not simple. Submit yourself to God, resist the devil, he will flee. 3 parts. But he continues on a little bit more. He says, come near to God, and he will come to you. Come near to God, and he'll come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts. Be double-minded. So, submit yourself to God, resist the devil, he'll flee from you. Come near to God, wash your hands, purify your hearts. The battle is bloody. Especially when we're trying to fight the war with our own hands and with our own weapons. And today, some of you are sitting in here and you're seeing the carnage that's around you because of the evil desires that are inside of you, the things that you're quarreling and fighting about. And have you ever been in that situation where how did we get here? We got here because of our selfishness. We got here because we're not getting what we want. And so when we look at the enemy, we're making it really easy. The enemy's going, man, you're destroying yourself. Have fun. This is easy. And he's just letting you do your thing. I think that's why Jesus says when disciples ask him to pray, he teaches them Lord prayer, and he says, keep us forgiven with you and forgiven with others. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Eugene Peterson, in his paraphrase, says it this way: keep us from ourselves and from the devil. Sometimes we go, the devil made me do it. And it's like, no, you did it. No, it was just you. Because there's this thing inside of you that just wants. I have it, you have it, I know all of us have it. And so it's finding this place of surrender that says, I'm not going to let that thing control me any longer. And I got to tell you, like today, this morning, through worship, it was heavy. You could feel the war. You could feel the tension. Why? Because there's just wanting something we don't have. And then doing whatever we can to get it. Even at the expense of something else. So what really is the answer to this? In Matthew chapter 18, this is right before Jesus gives us the commission to go that we talked about last week. He says, truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be what? Bound in heaven. And whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you that if two of you on earth, what? Agree about anything, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. Not by me. Not by somebody else. Your promotion isn't based on somebody else. Your promotion is based on God. He's the one that gives, and He's the one that takes. And every good and pleasing and perfect gift comes from above. It's all, anything good is His. He's good. Jesus even said, who are you calling good? I'm not, like, He's good. But He says, there's power in agreement. Whatever we say is bound, and whatever we say is loosed, and we say it together, it's there. And it's done. And so maybe for like those that are married in the room, maybe this is a good thing to start doing together. Like when you see something coming up, you just go, got to remember what your word says. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loose in heaven. And so, God, we don't want this to control us any longer. So we're asking you bind this thing. Like you take this thing and you put it away. I believe that when we begin to take that authority that Jesus has given us, I believe we're going to see better marriages. We're going to see stronger families. And with that comes stronger communities, stronger church, stronger schools, you name it. Why? Because we realize that this thing right now that's happening, it's a struggle between flesh. It's not against flesh and blood, but it's a spiritual battle. And you and I have been given authority in the agreement with what Jesus tells us to do. And so from today's examples, from Elijah feeding and giving him a drink, to Jehoshaphat sending out worshipers and beginning to worship, like we begin to see like God's ways, God's weapons are way different than our weapons. And how He does things is different than how we would do things. So the question really becomes the question that we started today off of is, who is my enemy? Like we got to understand, like right now, some of us might be our worst enemy. And I can tell you there's times that I'm my worst enemy. I want to pursue God. I want all that God has, but there's also times where I just want something to be normal. I just want to live a little bit like a peace every once in a while. But here's the thing. I hope that you see the enemy's not the person next to you or across the street from you. The enemy's the enemy. We have to surrender our lives so that we don't become really our own worst enemy. Because the battle is happening. But we work from a place of victory, not a place of defeat. That's the truth. And so today, why don't you just close your eyes for a minute? The team would come. What is the lie that the enemy has you believing right now? What is it? You know. What is the thing that the enemy is using to continue to sabotage, to control? What is it? Because today we're going to come into agreement with everybody in this room that that thing is bound. And something new is loose. And so maybe if you're in this room and you say, when you read James, that one hit. And I realized that quarrels and fights are happening because of me. Because of my desires. Because for some reason I have this belief that I'm lacking something. If that's you, just throw your hand up real quick. Okay. Hit the right spot on that one. So, Father, this morning, God, I pray that our desire and our want would be you. That, God, in each and every person that raised their hand or didn't raise their hand, God, I pray that you would give them an overwhelming hunger for more of you. Because more of this world isn't the answer. More of Jesus is the answer. More of His Spirit working in and through our lives is the answer. So God, today we submit ourselves. We humble ourselves before you. We say we're sorry. And James says this way. He just simply says, you have not because you don't ask. Because you're asking with the wrong motives. What is it that you need to ask for today? And remember, check your motives there just for a minute. Because oftentimes our motives reveal something else. It reveals a lie. It reveals something that we took on a long time ago as truth, and it's really not truth. It's a lie. And it's been sabotaging you. So whatever that is, just pray right now. So, Father, we stand. And we stand firm in faith. We stand strong on your word and what you said. We stand strong on the promises that you've given us. And God, we know you're not done. And God, we know we're not perfect. And we know we're going to have to continue to surrender those things day in and day out. But God, I want us to understand what Paul was trying to get the Ephesians to understand, that you are no longer a sinner. You're a saint through Christ Jesus. You said you loved us even while we were still sinners. Christ saved us. And in you, that's no longer our identity. So that lie that we've been carrying around, that badge of honor that we've been championing, God, it's done. It's set aside. And we are who you say we are. What you say is we're saved. We're saved by grace. And we have a new identity in Jesus. And His love is washing and purifying each and every one of our lives. So, Father, today we want to take this time to do even what Jehoshaphat did, to send out the worshipers. And so as we close our time together today, God, we're going to worship. And whatever battle we're fighting right now in this worship, we believe that you're going to bring victory. And so, God, we commit these things to you. Reveal more of who you are in every space, in every season of our life. And God, may we continually come and surrender who we are to you, wanting what you want, not what we want. And so we thank you. In Jesus' name. Amen. Would you stand to your feet with us this morning? We're going to sing one last song. And I want to invite you. I know some of you, you're really kind of refined, and you kind of are just the grab the seat and don't move your hands kind of person, or don't sway or anything like that. But I want you to find release, and I want you to find freedom, and I want you to find expression today. And for me, I'm like this a lot. And the reason why I'm like this a lot is because I just want to live at this place of surrender. Or you might see me like this, because I'm in a great place of need. But today, we want to get to a place where we just say, God, we want to worship you. Some of you might have good enough knees, and maybe you need to kneel down. And maybe that's the place where you find yourself this morning. And that place of surrender is trying to get as low as you can. But this place of surrender. This morning as we sing this song, may this be your cry. May this be our war cry this morning. And may we watch as walls just begin to fall down. Let's sing that.
There's a table that you prepared for me in the presence of my enemies. It's your body and your blood you shed for me, and this is how I fight my battle. There's a table that you prepared for me in the presence of my enemies. It's your body and your blood you shed for me, and this is how I fight my battle. And I believe you've overcome. And I will lift my song of praise for all you've done. This is how I fight my battle. This is how I fight my battle. This is how I fight my battle. This is how. This is how I fight my battle. This is how I fight my battle. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. Oh, it may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. Oh, it may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. So this is how I fight my battle. 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 This is how. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. This is how I fight my battle. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. So this is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how.
Sit still for a minute. This morning, as we kind of bring our time to close, I want to encourage you before you leave to find a few people. Maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your family that's together today, and just pray together. Pray that you would begin to recognize the devil's schemes and what he's trying to do to divide that. Maybe pray over each and every one of the people in that group that, like, we wouldn't want what we want, but we'd want what God wants. And that right here, right now in this place, that you'd be declaring that we're serving the Lord. And we understand that this battle is not between all of us right now, but there's a spiritual battle that's trying to steal, kill, and destroy God's purpose and plan for us right here. And so can we do that? Can we just be family for a little bit? And can we, before we kind of scuttle out real quick, just take some time and pray. And then when you're done, you're done. Real quick, before we go into that, if you have any, if you need any specific prayers, like maybe you just really believe in God for healing in some areas, we'd love to pray for you all those things. A couple things this week. We do have a work night on Tuesday night, so if you're interested and can come and help that night, we'd love to have you. If you're new, we'd love to stay connected with you, and so out by the connection area there's a little card you can fill out, or there's also a QR code you can scan, and you'll find all the stuff you need. But I just want to encourage you, before you go kind of getting out of here for the day, checking that box, let's just kind of make this a place where we just go, okay, from this point forward, we're going to follow Jesus. We're going to begin to realize, hey, the enemy's out there, he's prowling around, seeking who he may devour, right? but he's not going to devour us because we're going to stand firm. Okay? So let's take a moment before you leave. If you want to gather in groups, or if you got to leave, I understand that too. But just before you leave, get together with some people and just pray as we close this morning.